Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, we're just about ready.
Okay.
Okay, we're live. We're ready to go here. Welcome to another New Jersey Constitutional Republicans virtual conversation. It's my great honor and privilege today to have Mr. Jarrett Branch, the State Director of Blexit, New Jersey. Jarrett, thank you for joining me.
JR, thank you for having me. You know, I've been a fan for quite some while. I love the work that you do. I love the fact that you push the Constitution. And also love the fact that you are a big component to fighting for causes in the Black community. I don't know if many people know that, but you are one of the people in the forefront in New Jersey for fighting for our causes. And I really appreciate that.
Well, I thank you so much. I greatly appreciate those kind words. And as we were saying before we came on, I believe it's very important that the Republican Party reach out to our Black brothers and sisters and bring them back to the party, their party. Of course, we are the party of emancipation. We're the party of the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. We need to get back to that mentality. We need to create equal opportunity for all people, regardless of color, but we definitely have to work and get into the workout and go to the Black community, go into these areas, talk about the Declaration of Independence, the self-evident truth that all men are created equal and everyone has an equal opportunity, and provide a safe environment from which people can thrive economically and raise their families and support families, support mom, dad, and the children and their education, which initially comes from parenting. So that's very important to the Constitutional Republican movement and to establish this relationship with our Black community. I appreciate your words, Jarrett.
Yes, no, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I just want to touch on some of the stuff you just mentioned, especially the family aspect. Growing up in a military family, I'm a third generation veteran. Family is very important to us. We made sure we made time for family, made sure that we were there when we needed each other, and we were even there when we didn't want each other there. But it helped us create this that we still have to this day. And I watched slowly the minority community, especially the Black community, fall apart with the lack of a strong father in the household. And now they tell you you can't say this type of stuff in 2020, but I'm telling you can. When they had the Black father in the household, that's when the Black community was thriving the best. They were successful, the kids were going to school, they weren't getting involved in things they shouldn't, like gangs, drugs, premarital sex, what have you. They had someone that they could look up to, someone that they can admire to. I have that role model in my life. If it wasn't for my father, I don't know where I would be at this point. And again, there's nothing wrong with saying that you need a strong male role model in this family. There's nothing wrong with saying that, hey kids, it's okay to be a Republican. There's a stigma that you get taught when you're a young Black male, young Black woman, that the Republican Party is the party of racism. And they never tell you why. They just say, hey, they're racist, vote Democrat, vote Democrat. And sadly, I fell for that trap for many, many years. It wasn't until I joined the military myself and started working in public relations, then became a reporter for the military, that I start seeing the errors in my ways. I start seeing the tricks that reporters would use. I start seeing the tricks that these politicians would use to keep us docile, to keep us angry, and keep us voting for the same person for 30, 40, 50, some odd years, and nothing happens. It was just a travesty. And then I was kind of disillusioned for a while with just politics in general. And then Donald Trump came around. And I know it just sounds silly, but when he said, hey, Black people, what do you have to lose? I sat back for a second and said, okay, you know what? He's the first person to ever speak directly to the Black community during a debate. And no one else was doing that. They would tiptoe around the issue. They would talk about systemic racism and other buzzwords, but they weren't saying, hey, I want to help you. And the amount of help that he put in the few years that he has been there has been so influential on the Black community. I mean, prison reform, funding HBCUs, and not just that, bringing back pride into these communities, saying, hey, you're part of this community, you're not a victim. And that's one thing that Blexit, we try to let everyone know, you're not a victim, you're not a slave, you don't have to fall for this narrative. They tell you this narrative so they can control you, so they can tell you what to think, so you have this, what I call a plantation mentality. And once you lose your plantation mentality, suddenly you're, again, they say, you're not invited to the picnic. You're excluded from the Black community just because you had your own thoughts, your own beliefs, and your own actions. But if you understand history, these are the beliefs that we had for years. we just all of a sudden for the last 50, 60 years changed what we actually believed in. The Republican Party were the ones that were championing for civil rights. The Republican Party fought against Jim Crow, while the racist Democrats created Jim Crow, and then the racist Democrats in the North created segregation through financial and educational means, but then yelled at the Republicans in the South for wanting to keep a flag. It's asinine. Once you actually understand what actually was taking place, you're insulted, but you're also relieved because now you know the truth, and now you can let others know the truth as well.
Right. Very well said, Jarrett. And I'll have to say that there have been times within the party's history, the Republican Party's history, where we have failed to continue to show our presence and be in the Black community. And a lot of that, a lot of the attraction that the Democratic Party has had on a Black America, of course, has been a lot with promising policies and initiating policies that have failed and continually have failed decade after decade after decade, especially after LBJ's Great Society. But there have been times where Republicans have not done enough to reach out to the Black community and to go back to our initial principles, our initial founding. Of course, the Republican Party was founded on a great moral objective, which was to stop the expansion of slavery and then to eliminate slavery. And even from the very beginning of the party, there was a very vivacious abolitionist movement within the party from the North that wanted, for many years, wanted to abolish slavery. And they found a political party that identified with that great moral high ground. And the Republican Party today has to do the same thing with the great moral high ground of we have to take the great moral high ground in abolishing abortion, which has devastated our Black communities and has devastated and taken too many lives that are given the inviolability of life. And that's what the Supreme Court eventually needs to recognize, and the Constitution protect the inviolability of the life of all children, regardless of what they look like or what color they are. We are all one race. We are all the human race.
Yes, you know what, you touched on with that. Abortion has been a plague on the Black community for such a long time. And again, they tell you as a man, you can't have these type of feelings. But last I checked, it took a man and a woman to create a child. For the longest, I was a single father with full custody. Last time I checked, there was only 16% of males in New Jersey had full custody of their children, because the courts automatically thought that the woman was the best option, and many times the woman wasn't the best option. So these kids end up in these terrible situations, and now they have to rely on government assistance, and they're hearing their mother say, "Oh, I hate Black men," and they're hearing their sister say, "I hate Black men," and you hear the boys saying, "I don't want to be a Black man," because they're hearing this stuff because the people are upset about their situation. But they don't understand the people who are causing the problems in their situations are the Democrats, because again, they just want your vote. They can care less about what you actually want in your community. That's why when I hear things like Black Lives Matter saying defund the police, I'm like, really? Defund the police? You think that's what people who want in these communities? You want us to defund the police? And then I talk to people in Newark and in Jersey City, and when they have these Black and White Matter protests, they're like, we don't know these people. They just come up and show up, they march, they complain, they spray paint, and they say defund the police, and they don't care about anything. You know, like it's utterly ridiculous. But they tell you, oh, it's for Black Lives Matter. Well, I'm here to say that not just Black lives, white lives, Asian lives, all lives, the lives of Black babies, every life matters. And once you start to use race to say that a life matters, then you're just causing a whole plethora of problems that weren't there in the first place. Like, we should be able to care about each other. When did the Republican Party stop caring about people? We didn't. It's just we let the media and the Democrats hijack this, say, oh, we're the champions of civil rights. No, you're a champion and make feel-good bills that do nothing for no one except pad your ego and let people think you're actually doing something. Working in the State House, I see tons of Democratic bills that get passed because they just outnumber us and they don't do anything for communities. And it's just frustrating because they sit there and it's like if you watch one of these hearings, it's like a love fest between each other. Oh, you're so great and I'm so great. We're doing great things for people, and you're not. You're being completely unfair. Just like when they gave licenses to illegal immigrants, or the new thing with the licenses for being a barber. That's ridiculous. People have came here the correct way, who waited years, who are in situations where they're being raped, being attacked, who are political prisoners, wanted to come to this country and they had to do it the right way. And you're telling me that they're not entitled to what they're supposed to have, but you're gonna give it to people who did it the wrong way? When did we become the country of promoting and celebrating things that are wrong? We were built on the foundation of Christianity. We're built on a foundation of doing what's right. I don't know why that's a hard concept for the Democrats to grasp, and also some Republicans too. Like, I'm not saying we're as a Republican myself that I just say every Republican is great. No, I look at what their character is. I look at what they want to do for the community. I look at what they want to do for me as an individual, and also I look to see if they're self-serving. Because whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or Libertarian, Green Party, if you're a self-serving politician, we don't need you anywhere. You know, I have no problem with a strong Democratic Party. That makes the Republican Party stronger. So we have to go against it. We work together to solve issues. There's another issue I have too. When did it become a bad thing to work across the aisle? Sometimes you have to work across the aisle, but don't compromise your beliefs. That's the main thing. Continue to be Republicans. We have these beliefs that we have, and I understand some people are fiscal Republicans, some people are social Republicans. I understand there's tons of different types of Republicans, but at our core level, we all have the same beliefs. We have to make sure we promote these beliefs. We want strong families. We want good schools. We're pro-life. You know, we don't want constant wars. You know, I saw today that Sudan and Israel, when Trump brokered that deal, people were upset. How are you upset with peace in the Middle East? Because you usually have this, till today, I didn't think Trump derangement syndrome was real until I see people on my page yelling at me because I'm celebrating peace in the Middle East. It's ridiculous.
It is, and you make some great points, Jarrett. You really you have a lot of things to say there that are, I couldn't say better myself, if you will. But we have to remember too that prior to the Civil War, there was quite a bit of lawlessness that was going on in the country. There were actually incidents of riots and mob rule, unruly mob rule, murders, destruction, looting, similar to what we've seen this summer. And Abraham Lincoln gave one of his earliest speeches, and he talked about the necessity of law and order and how important it was that law and order ruled the day, because without law and order, people can't peaceably live. And of course, that ties into the founders in using the word to secure these rights. Governments are instituted among men in the Declaration of Independence. The founders understood, as Lincoln did, that the primary purpose of government was to protect the people and their property. And we've gotten a long way from that, but it's essentially what we need to get back to. The Republican Party needs to get back to. And I think this message resonates, and I think that President Trump understands the importance of law and order. And this is a message that we need to continue to carry forth as the constitutional Republican movement moves forward. And that is to establish law and order in the Black communities so that people are able to safely go outside, play ball in the street, enjoy the time with their children, and peaceably and safely get in their car, go to work, and return safely. Just simple, basic safety. And this is why it's so important that we help law enforcement, that we continue to fund our law enforcement, but we also need to create stricter laws so that we actually put the fear of God back into the criminal, because as you know, the Democrats look at criminals as victims. And this is one of the problems that we have with our justice system, our criminal justice system. We have to put the fear of God back into the criminal to deter them from continuing to infringe upon the rights of their fellow man. What do you think of that?
I totally agree. When I was at the White House a few weeks back with Blexit and listening to President Trump speak about law and order, I just looked around the South Lawn, and it was just so many different people just smiling, shaking their heads, agreeing. And they're not just from New Jersey, New York. They're from all across the country, different ethnic backgrounds, different religions, all calling for law and order because they just want to have a peaceful life. And again, yeah, we treat these prisoners like they're celebrities. We sensationalize them like, oh, they're victims. No, they're hurting people. Like, it's wrong.
Right.
And we can't just say something. You can have an opinion on something, right? Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but a fact is a fact. And the fact is, these criminals are a lot of them are repeat offenders. They're continuing to do these actions, and they're hurting a lot of people. And again, with the prison system, There's work that needs to be done in the penal system. That's one of Blex's other core tenets, to help the penal system work so our recidivism rates drop. Because it doesn't help if these people, as soon as they leave jail, they go back right to their life of crime. But also there have to be some, you have to take some self accountability for your actions. I have friends I grew up with who are in jail. I have friends who are dead. I have friends who are in the military. I have friends who are police officers. And we all came from the same area. We all had the same similar experiences. We just chose to take different paths in life. And we have to make sure that we educate the Black community and all communities about the proper paths they need to take. Because again, jail is supposed to be deterrent. It's not, people aren't supposed to say, oh, I could do 10 months standing on my head. 2 years is nothing. I'll be out in 6 weeks, blah, blah, blah. That's ridiculous. That's utterly ridiculous. And some of these crimes are heinous. They are so heinous that I don't understand why people are just like pushing for them and pushing for these people to be free. Like what Governor Murphy just signed, he signed it today, right? About like all those inmates out for COVID, but then you send our kids to school, but it's okay for them to go to school, but it's not safe for the inmates. And he doesn't even care. He doesn't care about the inmates. He just cares about his image with the new progressive soccer moms and new progressive Black Lives Matter and the youth to keep his position. But again, he cares less about these things, because if he actually cared about the Black community, he would actually do things that matter, like school choice. If you can do virtual learning, you can do school choice. It's pretty simple. And all his barriers against it doesn't really help. And then they just try to pass a whole bunch of educational bills the other day that do nothing for the Black community. They want to start teaching people about Black history in shop class. Listen, I can learn about Eli Whitney in history class. I don't need to be in shop and learn Eli Whitney created the cotton gin. I can learn that in that history class. You're taking away from what we're there to learn. These kids need to be more financial classes. They need to learn how to survive in the modern world. They need more language courses, because eventually, again, return to melting pot, they're going to need to learn to speak a second language. I know we teach Spanish for 2-3 years, but stuff is not enforced. It's really not helping us at all. And then when we get out, we feel disenfranchised, and then we run to go get these stifling benefits that don't do anything. I know people who aren't married because they don't want to lose their Section 8. I know people who will run a line to go stand in line and get Section 8. And not because they're bad people, it's because they were taught this is the only way you can survive. And that's not the case. They're not victims. I'm not a victim. We're Americans.
Jared, well said. And you touch upon a very, very important point and a very important priority to the Constitution Republicans, and that is education. And it's very evident that in the cities and in the schools and the Black community, not only in the Black community, but throughout the nation, there's been an elimination of civics and American history in our schools. And this has had a detrimental effect on society, because people don't understand what the Constitution is. They don't know about the principles of the Declaration of Independence. They don't know how government is supposed to run. They don't know that the government isn't there to provide for them subsidies, but merely to protect their natural rights, which are life, liberty, and then provide the environment from which they can pursue their own happiness. Someone can't give you happiness. That's something you get on your own, but you need a safe environment from which to do that. And you also need an economic environment from which you can earn money to create capital so that you can buy a home and buy the things that you enjoy and will share with your family. But the elimination of civics and American history has had a detrimental effect on our schools and on our colleges and universities. And this is really why we're in the situation that we're in today. And this is why intuitively man wants to look for somebody else to do something for them. We want a king. We want somebody who will take all the responsibility and in turn will sacrifice our liberty for safety. And this is the wrong attitude, but this is what has been perpetuated through the elimination of civics and American history, and teaching people to be good citizens, to partake in society, to understand that regardless of who is in elected office, whether it's president or any other office, the Constitution is what protects your natural rights. And any representative must be evaluated on what they think and what they believe the purpose of government is, and whether they will adhere to the Constitution or not. Now, clearly, Phil Murphy does not believe in a Constitution. He believes that he knows better, that he knows better for everyone, that he can decide who are the winners and losers economically, who can stay open, who cannot. He can decide for us what needs to be taught in the schools as opposed to civics and education. He wants to decide for us whether we can go to the mail, whether we're going to use mail balloting, whether we're going to go to the polls and vote in person. And this is the idea of progressive government, that elites and experts make the decisions for the people. And if people were being taught civics and education in American history, they would realize that as Americans, we're free and we're independent. And those words are actually in the New Jersey Constitution. Human beings are inherently free and independent, and that's what should be taught in the school. And the school should teach the Constitution, which protects the principles of the Declaration of Independence, so that people are their own sovereigns. We, the people, are the sovereigns in a constitutional republic, not those who've eliminated civics in American history, and not the Phil Murphys and the Democratic progressives who think they know better than you and I do.
Yes, I totally agree. And they don't teach the right stuff in history class. Again, they remove these things. I'm lucky enough to live in an area, Monmouth County, was predominantly red. You know, Trump won this county, I think, in 2016. So we actually have, Flag Day. We have the kids like fighting to want to do the Pledge of Allegiance. It reminds me when I was a kid, grew up on a military base. There was so much pride in being an American. There was so much pride in understanding where you came from. And also, I watch a lot of these Black Lives Matter protests. And a lot of these Black Lives Matter protests love quoting Malcolm X, right? They're like, oh, I love quoting Malcolm X. By any means necessary, by any means necessary. And it's so infuriating to me because I don't think they realize that he's talking about you and he's talking about the Constitution. They leave the first part and the last part out. He's talking about it's your right as an American by any means necessary if they fail you through your constitutional rights. But they just chop it up so he seems like a radical, angry Black man that fits their agenda. Because he can't just come back and tell the truth. Just like when he went to Mecca and came back, he's like, I was wrong. This racism stuff is wrong. We're doing this the wrong way. And he got him killed by his own people. A lot of times, that's another thing about being a Black conservative, you get ostracized. You get tossed to the side. Your family stops talking to you. Your friends kind of disown you. People that you thought you can trust just stop talking to you because you have a different opinion. And it's not right because we don't do that to other people. I never see you doing that. I don't do that. I have tons of people on my page who don't agree with me. And I don't just unfriend with them or tell them they're awful, send them death threats. And also the most racism I ever experienced was when I was at a rally and when I was working for Bob Hugin, and the Democrats just mercilessly attacked me. They told me Harriet Tubman would have shot me. They called me the N-word. They called me a coon. I mean, anything you could think of. And then all I turned to them and said was, name one stance of Menendez that you agree with. They couldn't say anything. See, and that's the problem. You're angry for no reason. And I asked you, what do you believe in this other person? You have nothing to believe in except that he's a Democrat. That's not good enough. Just being a Democrat is not good enough. And for me, just the person being a Republican is not good enough. I need to know where you stand. I need to know you care about this First Amendment and Second Amendment. I want you to care about my children's futures. You're not going to sell the way to another country. You're not going to tax us until we just have to leave. I love New Jersey. As a military kid, I moved my whole entire life. I don't want to move again because the governor is trying to tax us to death to fund these programs that we don't need, so he can later on run for president. We're not stupid. One of those next step guys. He's testing the waters in New Jersey with all his plans and all the stuff he's doing to see if he can use this on a national level. What he's doing is more suited for a national level. It's not even suited to the type of people or even how New Jersey operates as a state. So he can care less. And if you don't believe me, look at that video of Murphy walking down the boardwalk with that reporter, and the reporter says, "Hey, what's a good food to get here?" You couldn't even answer. You're telling me you're the governor of New Jersey, you can't answer what's a good beach food? Like, he doesn't care about us. He just cares about.
No, he's not from Jersey.
Yeah, he doesn't care about us. He's just another Wall Street bigwig coming here to make a name for himself because he just met the right people. I understand that. But what he also does, what you mentioned earlier, he goes into the minority communities. I won't name the group, but I went to one of their meetings, a minority group, and I saw an $80,000 donation on the wall from him and his wife. So he's been going into these communities and talking to people. And this is one of the most, one question I get the most. How do we go into the urban communities and reach people? You just start. You just go. These people, we want to hear this information. We're thirsty for the information. We are fed up. You know, we just need a different direction to go into. And again, if you're not showing up, all we know is the songs that we see around us. And they're the same people who've been here for 20, 30, 40 years, like where I am, Cologne. I can't think of one good thing Cologne did, but not a single person will talk bad about him. But again, he doesn't do anything. It's just because he's active in the community talking to people. And as Republicans, you can't be scared. You can't be scared that, oh, they're going to say, you know, this, and that to me. You have to be able to handle this because, again, they were lied to. They think you're coming in there to take away everything for them. They think that you're racist. You think you want to destroy their families. And it's the complete opposite because the Democrats control the narrative. And we cannot let them continue to control the narrative. That's one thing I learned in the military as a public relations specialist. You have to control the narrative. But once you lose the narrative, you lose the people. And we have lost the people for a while, but we will get them back. Because people like you and me see through the BS, and we're telling people, hey, you can too. We're giving them avenues to actually experience what America is always about. It's not about racism. It's not about hating your fellow man. It's none of that stuff. It's not. It really isn't. And it's sad that that's the point we got to in 2020, that Americans hate their own country. 2001, we were all waving flags. We were all loving America. We all wore flags. Everything was covered in flags. So 19 years later, we hate the same country. It doesn't make sense.
Well, what you're saying is true. And of course, you know, Phil Murphy talked about the fact that he wanted to get rid of Woodrow Wilson's desk that he was using. And because Woodrow Wilson was no doubt he was a true racist. But Phil Murphy may have gotten rid of his desk, Jarrett, but he's kept all of his progressive policies. And of course, FDR took it to another level, and LBJ took it to another level. Of course, Obama was a progressive as well as Clinton, as well as both Clintons. And their progressive policies, what's amazing is that the very same things that a lot of the black Democrats and white Democrats accuse us of, well, they're guilty of. With the accusations they make against us, they're the ones that are really guilty. I mean, they're really the ones that personify the racism. They're the ones that are discriminatory. They're the ones that want to treat certain people differently than others. They're the ones who want to redistribute, take some from others and give to others, and all about special interest, all about identity groups. So it's the Democrats that really are guilty of what they accuse you and I of, and all the other Republicans and conservatives. So we have to remember that. But I also want to say, Jarrett, that it's important that we support men and women like yourself, because you know as well as I do, there are black conservatives in these communities, in the black communities, and they need support. Like you said, you've been ostracized, you've been called names, you've been singled out. This is why constitutional Republicans, all Republicans, must support men and women like yourself, conservatives who are already in the black community, who need to be given encouragement, who need to be given fellowship, who need to be given help in whatever way and shape or form it may come into need. And that is how we will grow this Republican, conservative, constitutional Republican movement, by supporting men and women like yourself.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the movement that you're starting. I'm a big believer in the Constitution. You know, people like to say it nowadays, like, oh, the Constitution is racist and blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, guys, whatever. Just another more, you know, MSNBC talking points. You know, but they don't actually read it. I keep little copies from the Heritage Foundation in my bathroom, in my kids' rooms, so they have it all the time. So, you know, they have flags in their room as well, because I want them to have pride in their country. They're like, oh, there's nothing good about your country because slavery, 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 slavery. My history is more than slavery. My history is helping building the foundation of this country as a team, as a unit, as Americans. Again, when you grow up on a military base, you know, it gets blended, and you don't really, you understand people are different races. You know, people say, I don't see race. Well, you know, you see race, but it doesn't matter, you know, because you're all Americans. Your fathers and mothers are all doing the same things. You have this same fear that they might not come home the next night because of just the type of jobs that they have. But we're all taught that, you know, you got to love each other. And that's what we don't have anymore. We're told that you have to hate someone because they're different than you. You have to hate someone because they don't think the same way as you. And the people who are telling you this is other liberal Democrats with their, which I call liberal privilege. When I was in DC and we were marching, we ran across a church, we was having an event, and we started chanting together, Jesus matters, Jesus matters. It was people of all different faiths and backgrounds that's just chanting and celebrating the country, saying, "No, back to blue." And these are things that they don't want us to do because it doesn't help them. It doesn't help line their pockets. It doesn't fit their narrative. I never felt like a victim, and I should say that. But they tell me I'm a victim. Yesterday, Joe Biden was talking about, I'll cure systemic racism in 8 years. Really? Systemic racism in 8 years? And then people are like, oh, I love it. And that's why I put out my information, because I want them to know the truth. There's no way you can stop systemic racism in 8 years. That's illogical. It doesn't make sense. It's been around for thousands of years. People have their preconceived notion, their biases, and that's okay because that's just how life is. You're not going to change everything. But to say that you're going to make the world a Montessori love fest, everyone loves everyone within 8 years just because you're president is a lie. The lie that you make people follow, and they believe it. And then they get disenfranchised. They're like, oh, I don't like Democrats. I don't like Republicans. I hate America. No, you don't hate America. You hate the people who are in charge in your area. That's who you hate. You hate the people lying to you. And then you also get told to hate people for no reason. I ask people all the time, why do you hate Republicans? Why do you hate Trump? And they start saying these things, and I tell facts. And well, he's just a racist. How is he a racist? And they can't say anything. Well, he just is. And that's your opinion. But again, facts are facts, and we don't live life off of opinions and emotions. We can't just run off our own emotions, because that's one issue too with the Black community and communities and Democrats in general. They try to get us emotionally entangled into these causes that aren't ours. And they try to use us as pawns to push forth these agendas. And at the end of the day, their agendas push forward while we're still left holding the bag and they have nothing done. We need entrepreneurship. We need to learn history. We need to develop causes that matter to everyone. And we need to do this together as a people. We need to stop separating. That's one of my biggest beliefs. I think we can come together as a people. Some people say I have lofty goals and lofty dreams. The two of them is to bring more minorities to the party, make New Jersey red, and just make us actually get along with each other. There's no reason to hate your fellow man because you have a different political opinion. It's different opinions. Everyone has opinions. But again, once we start making opinions facts or making editorial news shows, actual news shows, then we're going down a slippery slope. News is news. Your opinion is your opinion. Don Lemon, you're not news. Anderson Cooper, you're not news. Love Tucker, but you're not news. It's an opinion-based show. We don't have news shows anymore.
Yes.
I want to turn the show and actually the facts and not hear your opinions. And I don't get me wrong, I value a lot of these people's opinions, but then again, you're just saying stuff to manipulate the people. And then your conglomerate news channel, who owns like 50 stations, you flip through, are all saying the same thing. It's a PR tactic. We don't have news anymore. We have public relation firms telling us stories about what's going on in the world to convince us to do what they want. And I kind of just want news back. I miss a Walter Cronkite's, I have this news.
Well, you're right. Lots changed in 40, 50 years, especially when it comes to news. But even back then, Jarrett, there were those who were leaning left and who were helping progressive leftist causes even back during World War II, if you will. And what I thought was very profound that you were talking about the fact that, people will say, well, slavery, white people are racist and you were slaves and we were slaves and systemic racism. And there are a lot of words that are used, but what they fail to realize is, and this is a result of the elimination of American history and civics in the schools, is the fact that we're the only nation in the world that actually fought a civil war over slavery. And make no mistake, regardless of what anybody tells you, the facts and the history show that the Civil War was indeed fought over slavery. And there were those in the North who took the high moral ground and said enough is enough. The South succeeded. They started the Civil War because they wanted to keep that institution, or they called it their peculiar institution of slavery. They wanted to keep it, and all of the declarations of succession of all the states that succeeded all said that we are doing this because of slavery. And Alexander Stephens, the vice president of the Confederacy, said that slavery is the cornerstone of the Confederacy. And this is what people who don't think that Republicans are truly the abolitionist party, are truly the emancipation party, are truly the party of the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery forever, the 14th Amendment, which gave due process to all Black Americans, and then the 15th Amendment, which gave all Black Americans the right to vote. The men at that time anyway. Of course, the women came along with the 19th Amendment. But these are all, and that was incidentally the 19th Amendment, another Republican amendment. So this is what we as Republicans have to get the information out there to those who tell you, well, it's only, it's been slavery and it's inherent in our nature and so forth. No, it's not inherent in our nature. We fought a war, and there were over 350,000 men who gave their lives, and many of them were white men. And they gave their lives to end slavery once and forever because they believed, as Lincoln articulated in building the Republican Party movement, he believed in what the Declaration of Independence said, and that is the self-evident truth that all men are created equal. A man is a man. You are a man. I am a man. You can't classify us as anything else, but that is the first thing you can classify us. We are human beings. And that is the common denominator that the Republican Party has to identify and get out there, as well as the great work that we did to end slavery. And the fact that in 1870, Black Americans were all Republican, every single one of them. And that's what we need to get back to, because we are truly the party of emancipation and freedom for all people.
Yes, I totally agree with that. We have to get back to our values as a community. Again, we were misled, because again, this was all new to us. After slavery, we were kept down as a people, by the Jim Crow laws. People up north were, they were thriving. There were businessmen thriving. So I'm not going to say that every Black person had a horrible experience after slavery, but some did. If it wasn't, if we would have had Juneteenth, if some people were having horrible experiences in slavery. But again, we weren't being stifled as much as we were told we were being stifled. And the Republican Party was helping. We're the first Black congressman Republicans. And no one knows this stuff because they don't want you to know this stuff. They don't want you to think that the Republican Party, as a party that actually cares about minorities, cares about women, our party has stayed the same. The Democratic Party has changed. I used to, a while ago, be a Democrat when I was younger, and my values haven't changed. Their values have changed. They have moved so far to the left and so extreme that people can't understand it. They're losing faith in family and first Democrats because they're like, abortion after you're born? No, I can't deal with that. I'm a Democrat, but I'm a Christian first. I'm a family member first. I care about my family. You're placating the most extreme version of your party. And it's ridiculous. And again, too, I understand there's extremists in the Republican Party who really don't represent our party. I do take issue with that. I think gatekeepers in both parties are detrimental to the forward movement of us as a country. People tell you you're only Republican if you can do this, and this, and they don't realize that what you're talking about is not accurate. You don't understand your own stuff. You're just talking TV talking points, or you want to sound like the president. Listen, Donald Trump is a smart man. He understands the terminology, the words he's using, his word choices. He has some of the best speechwriters in the world. Everyone's not Donald Trump. You can't just say things this way and think you're going to get your point across. And same thing, just like, I'm not a Barack Obama fan, but the gentleman was eloquent when he gave speeches. That's why he was able to con an entire country for 8 years. People are like, that man knows what he's talking about because of the way he presents himself. Same thing with George Bush and Bill Clinton. People fall for these presentations of these people, and they mean well, they're good, but again, we can't just fall for pomp and circumstance. You can't fall for a guy in a shiny suit who talks well, saying, "Hey, you know what? I know what's best for you," and this is the first you're meeting them. These people need to come from your own communities, and I say that with Republicans too. And if you have to talk to these communities, you have to visit their communities, you have to make inroads, you have to not be afraid. And you have to genuinely care, because we've been lied to so much that we know when you're coming to us and you're lying. It's gonna be evident that you're scared for our votes. And again, like Joe Biden said, you ain't black if you don't vote Democrat. That's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. Joe Obama said something similar, saying that you vote Democrat no matter what. And I'm thinking like,
Yeah.
really, no matter what. So I'm supposed to vote for like these horrible, horrible people who don't care about anything. I want the Democratic debate. Not a single person mentioned veterans. And I'm thinking like, really, you're not going to mention veterans? Not a single person on the stage mentioned things about veterans in a Democratic presidential debate. And as a veteran, I was insulted. I was just like, we're one of your largest voting blocks in the country who votes consistently. And you guys went to illegal immigrants and then you start speaking in Spanish. And like, I'm like, what? Stop. No one, we see through it and we don't care. We don't want that. We don't want any more pandering to us. We want the same thing that everyone else has. And I personally want people to work for it. I don't want people to think like I should get this because I'm Black. I should get this because I'm a woman. I should get this because I'm a man. It should be equal for everyone. Like when we are supposed to believe in equality. This country was founded on equality. But again, we don't have equality because we have packed people in so many separate little groups that people feel they have to be protected from everything. You know, like so many safe space. You need a safe space for this. You need a safe space for that. You can't say that. You can't say that. Everything offends everyone. But then things that are offensive to us as conservatives, they didn't care less. They care less about. They care less that we don't like abortion. They care less that you make TV shows that glorify abortion and it's a joke and you think it's funny. You make TV shows making fun of Christians. You have a TV show called Lucifer glorifying the devil. And we're supposed to be okay with this? And then you make TV shows where you have the black actors and the black people on the show as gang members. HBO is notorious for this. They make them the worst character going through the worst struggles, and that's not everyone's struggle. I don't understand why they think that every minority is struggling. Every minority has to dig themselves out because they're being destroyed by society. No, that's not the case. That's the victim mentality. My mother, growing up, hated slave movies because she felt that was them trying to tell us what our place is. She's like, I'm not a slave, so I'm not going to watch slave movies because this is not where my history starts. I know where my history starts. I know where I come from. I know I come from slaves because my grandfather did our ancestry all the way back to the 1800s. So I've seen the pictures on the plantation, but that doesn't define me. You know, like it's like 8 generations away. That doesn't define me. What defines me is my character, what I believe in, and not my race and color. And that doesn't define you either. As a white man, you should be able to talk about any topic that you want to talk about because you're an American. The fact that they want to censor white men, they want to censor white women, they want to censor Black men when it doesn't fit their narrative is disgusting. But if you care about what they care about, you can say whatever you want to anyone at any time. And you have thousands upon thousands of people telling you you're doing a great job. It's ridiculous. And no longer shall we be censored. I appreciate the silent majority. I stand by you. I stand with you. But I'm no longer going to be silent. I am not going to be silent behind the scenes. And I'm letting people know that this is no longer going to take place. People like you and people like me and everyone else who is fighting for these causes are going to continue to fight regardless of what you say, because we know that at the end of the day, we have a higher power we have to answer to. And I'm sorry, above all else, my faith comes first. And I am never going to do anything that's going to diminish my faith and my standing with the Lord.
Amen. Amen, Jarrett. And I invite our audience, Jarrett, to be with us on 7 o'clock this Tuesday evening, the 27th. I'll be interviewing James Lindsay, who wrote a book entitled Cynical Theories, which is getting a tremendous amount of reaction, a lot of readers. He's selling a lot of books. He's doing every day. He's doing a YouTube interview or a podcast, getting the word out on a lot of what we're talking about tonight that is employed by the left. It's called critical social justice theory. It basically is the motivation behind Phil Murphy's entire agenda. And it is, of course, the bedrock, the basis for the Democratic Party. And we're going to take a real deep dive into what social critical race theory is, the ideas of the woke, if you will, quote unquote, the woke. So we're going to really get into a deep dive of that so people understand. I've been talking about it for many years as being referred to as cultural Marxism, which does have some, there are certain points to it. But Dr. Lindsay also talks about the effects of postmodern world, which basically is very nihilistic, believes in absurdity, believes that there is no more objective truth, believes that 2 + 2 = 5 as opposed to 4, it rejects objective empirical data, objective truth for total relativism. So I invite all to join us for that that's going to be a very interesting conversation. But Jarrett, as we finish up, tell us about Blexit, New Jersey. Tell us about what's happening and what we can do to help support your important work in that organization.
So Blexit, New Jersey started. So first of all, on Facebook, it's Blexit, New Jersey, not Blexit NJ. We have a copycat page. Just if you see that copycat page, please report it. It's Blexit, New Jersey. You can reach us by blexitnewjersey@gmail.com. Again, we're trying to do all these sorts of different events. We're going to have some police reform town halls. We're going to have some bi-weekly Zoom meetings. We're gonna do a lot. We're doing a lot of food drives. But again, we're going to try to advocate for a lot of things like school choice and developing history programs, and also entrepreneurship. We're going to actually teach these kids in these communities how to invest and how to do things like that, help the minority businesses who've been destroyed and lives ruined by Governor Murphy and Black Lives Matter. And we're going to continue to grow as a group. Again, Canvas is great. Brandon is great. We're going to continue to Back to Blue, have the Back to Blue events. We'd love for you to come on to one of our podcasts. Again, we're also looking for different partnerships. So if you're interested in a partnership with Blexit, reach out to us. And again, we'd love to come to any events that you're having. Again, we're nonpartisan because, again, we're not beholden to any party. So if you're a Democrat who's aligned with our beliefs, we'll pay you the proper respects and show up. But again, we go places where our beliefs are aligned, just like we went to the White House. Trump and Blexit, we align. So we celebrate him. But again, and if you get the chance to check out my Facebook page, make NJ Red. Again, we have over 11,000 followers in 3 months, which shows me that people are ready for a change. I am so happy that people are ready for a change. And then just follow us on different social media accounts: Instagram, Blexit NJ, Twitter, Blexit NJ, and Facebook, Blexit New Jersey. And if you want to join, just go to blexit.com. Anyone could join. There's no requirements. There's no dues. You have to be a race and age. No, anyone can join. We're not a segregational group like Black Lives Matter. We embrace all people who want to come in and make sure that life is better, not just for the Black community, but for all communities. And again, I really appreciate you for having me today. It's been an honor to be on your show. Again, I say that I've been watching you for a very long time, and you've been championing Black community rights for such a long time. And I really do appreciate that, because the stuff that you talk about and the things that you try to present aren't really relevant or aren't really talked about in the Black community, and they need to be.
Yeah.
And you make a point to reach out to the Black community. You actually lead by example, and this is what we need. We need people like you, people like me, who actually care about what's going on and really have the faith to do it. And so again, thank you for having me. Check out Blexit New Jersey. If you see Blexit NJ, please report it. It's a false page. With the way Facebook works, we're a conservative group, kind of, sort of, but they take forever to get rid of our competition when we have a problem. Facebook censorship is something to talk about later on, but again, I do appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you. I look forward to talking to you again. I look forward to all the great things that Blexit New Jersey can do for New Jersey, the people of New Jersey. Again, we're not Black Lives Matter. We actually do things, and we want change. We're not just all talk. We don't want to destroy the community. We want to build it up.
Well, thank you so much, Jarrett. And just let me say as we wrap up that we're in a very there's a lot of polarization, if you will, in our nation today between the parties. And generally people look to try to grow their base. They try to enthuse their base and enthuse those who support them already. Well, the Constitutional Republican movement and what you're doing with Blexit, we want to reach out to other people. We believe in moderation and not being down the middle policy-wise, but in being able to moderately discuss and have conversations and not become so polarized, because there are certain common denominators that we can agree with, even with the Democrats. And we want to be able to have conversations with them and not put our defenses up to the point where we're polarized any longer. We want to open up the discussion. We want to work in a bipartisan manner. We've had recent politicians, recent representatives who are like this, like Jack Kemp was, like Joe Lieberman. And we want to get back to that. We talked about it yesterday with our program with the book that we're researching and doing a deep dive into, which is Abraham Lincoln's Statesmanship and the Limits of Liberal Democracy, which Professor John Schaff from Northern University in South Dakota. And we were talking about the fact that there's far too much polarization in the country politically. We need to break that polarization down. We need to have good, honest discussions. We need to try to work together and unify around the fact that we're human beings and that we're all Americans, and we don't need to put modifiers or hyphens in front. We're all Americans, regardless of color, regardless of sex, regardless of religion. We believe in the ideals of the Declaration of Independence. And the last thing I'd like to say, Jarrett, is please include me and the Constitutional Republicans in what you're doing with your podcast or with your events or with your anything that you're planning to do. Please include me, keep me informed. Let's work hand in hand together to obtain our mutual objectives. And I do thank you again for joining me tonight.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Everyone definitely be in touch. And that's a great idea. We're all working together for a common goal. And when you find people that you're all working with for a common goal, it only makes sense to work together to make sure that goal becomes a reality.
Let's do it. Let's get to work and let's work together. Great to have you, Jarrett. It was a great discussion, great conversation. I'll talk to you very soon. Please share this with our audience. Please share this video with others. We can create a whole conglomeration of people who are like-minded, who are thinking precisely the way Jarrett is, precisely the way the Constitutional Republicans are, and we can again establish true justice, real justice for all the people, not just some, but for all the people. Thank you very much, Jarrett. And remember what Lincoln said, liberty for all. Thank you very much. Have a good night.